And I'm back with another React Native tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll see how to do this clap animation. As you clap on this button, it changes the image and the clap bubble shows up slowly. So this is what we'll be learning and doing at the end of this tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started, and I have the starter code here. So let's save it first and to see the end result. Okay, now let's go ahead, and now we have this orange background. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we want to show this clap button here. And the clap button would respond to touch or on press. So we'll create our own custom button using touchable opacity. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'll call touchable opacity, and that's it. So it's exported over here, and I want to define style for it. So let's go ahead and the styles, let's say clap button. Okay, so we'll define it over here, clap button, and give it width 100 and height 100, and say border radius 50, and background color say white. Okay, alright, so let's save it and see where it is. Okay, now it's over there, and well, I want to put it back somewhere down. Sorry, let's go ahead. Okay, so I want to put it back somewhere down over here. So now let's define with the absolute position, and I want to give it a left position, say 150, and from bottom, say it'll stay from somewhere in 200. Okay, so now it's right over here, and so this is touchable opacity. It's like a view, it's like a container. So I want everything inside this container to be in middle. Well, okay, that's one thing, but that's coming later. So now let's go ahead and show an image hand or clapping hand image over here. So let's first define our image here. So constant clap icon. Okay, let's import this and make sure it's imported the image component. Okay, and I'll source I already have it in my folder. I'll put a link for this resources so you can download and practice on your own. So assets, the first one is called clap.png, and I want to give it style, styles dot say img. Okay, we're good. Okay, we should not have any error. Okay, we're good now. One more time. Okay, we have an error here. Okay, we're good. And let's see, we should not have this one over here. We're good. Alright, so let's go ahead and define this image object property here. So I want to give it width, say 60, and height, say another 60. Alright, and now we want to pass this image icon or this clap icon within our view. So remember, this is a view, so we can pass it as a child of this view. So just call clap icon. Okay, and let's save it. Okay, it's, well, now it's not in the middle. So as just now I said earlier that we want to put everything in the middle of this white container, and this is our white container, right? So let's define some property here. So we can call it justify center. Okay, all right, now it's centered horizontally. Now let's center it vertically. Now let's center it horizontally. So we'll do align items. Okay, cool. All right, so do remember, we are putting this one inside our container. The container itself is positioned using this view properties with height, absolute position of this view properties. Okay, and whatever inside stays in this container, we put in the middle using these two properties. Okay, so don't get confused that, I mean, why this was not centered using this. Okay, so we are putting everything inside this container in the middle using this property. Okay, so now we have this one. So we want to respond to it. And another thing, let's see. So when I press hold for a long time, the opacity becomes almost 0. So we don't want like this. So we can define active opacity. So say 0.8. Okay, now let's click on it. Not that much. Okay, good. All right. So now we have this button over here. Now I want to give it a 3D feeling. So let's use shadow color. So shadow color, say black. And the other property is shadow offset. It takes 2 with 5 and height, because I want to put it in down, so that's why +5. Okay, and now of course I need to define shadow opacity, say 0.7. Okay, now it more looks like a 3D button. Okay, so now we are good. And right now what do we want to do? We want to be able to touch on it and get a response back or do something. So let's first define a press handler over here. So on press, and call it clap hand. Okay, all right. So now let's go ahead and define it over here. So I'll call it const clap hand. Well, for now it doesn't take any parameters. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make sure with the console log that it's working. Hi there. Okay, let's save it. Now let's bring up our terminal. Okay, so well, it's over here. So hi there, it's working. The other logs are from the previous tutorial. Okay, so it's working. All right. Okay, of course we don't want this one. Okay, so we want something to happen. We want, once we click on the clap button, the number of claps increases and the animation starts up from here and goes up with a bubble, and with the number of claps has been rendered so far, or given, I mean the number of claps has been done. So we want to do that. So the first thing we want to do, we want to count the number of claps, or we want to remember the number of claps. So let's go ahead and define some state variable to do that. So I'll use const count claps, set count claps. Okay, and I'll use a state variable, or state, useState to state the properties or the values. Okay, and we'll initialize it to 0 and make sure useState has imported, and it's been imported. All right. Okay, so now we can do something within our clap hand press handler. So as soon as there is a button press here, we can count it and save it. So let's go ahead and do it. So we'll call this set count claps to save the current claps. So set count claps. So we can just directly call the count +1. So, well, of course, first time count claps is 0, right? It is initialized to 0, and then we increase it as with 1 +1 as we are doing it here. So next time when you click on the button, we'll see that count claps equal 1. So let's go ahead and log it on the console. So count claps. All right. Okay. Well, now let me do a long log. Number of claps. Okay, like this. So it's more obvious from here. I don't want to drag it. Okay, number of claps 0, number of claps 1, number of claps 2. So all I'm doing here, so we have this handler, and we call set count claps from here, and increase the number of claps on each click over here. So this is the one thing we are doing. And another thing we want to do right now, as we clap, we want to change the image. So that's more like an animation. So we want to show a different clapping hand. And now we can do it because we have this condition. We have this condition over here. So now let's first, I think we need to put it down. Okay, over here. So now let's create a conditional block here. So clap icon would look for this variable over here and see whether it's 0 or more than 0. If it's more than 0, then we'll change it. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and create the condition. So, well, we can say count claps. So we want to see this one. How many? If it's more than 0, then do something. If it's more than 0, then we'll show this image over here, this one. And well, if it's not more than 0, well, sorry, if it's more than 0, well, clap count here, then we'll show this one, the current one, and otherwise we'll show the different one. So let's go ahead and do image. Well, I can just copy paste this line over here. Okay, and I want to change it. Okay. All right. Okay, now let's go ahead and save it, because I already have this image. All right. So now, so this is the current clap. Now, once we change it, so it's been clapped like that. Okay. Of course, we can change it, the direction. Say, like for example, well, clapped this one here. I think this sounds better. This looks better. So this is let me reload it. Okay. So well, now count claps. Well, definitely we didn't do anything, so it's 0, right? So we're gonna show this one, clap hand, and this is this image. And as soon as we click on it, the render happens and update happens, and then immediately we see this one. Okay, let's go ahead. Yes, this is the clapped one. Okay, let's reload it one more time. Okay, so right now we see this one, clap. This is the default one because count claps is not more than 0. And once we click on it, in React Native, re-render happens, and the total, this value has been updated after clicking on this. Okay, after clicking on this, the render function is immediately get called. Okay, right, hope it makes sense. All right, so now we have done this so far. Okay, and we also want to do another thing. We want to save it. Save how many times the clap has been done, count clap. So we want to save in an array. So let's go ahead and declare it. So I'll call it as claps and set claps. Okay, and we want to save it in an array. So we'll define it as empty array, and once it's increased over here, we'll save it in the claps array using JavaScript push method on array. So just call count claps. Okay, all right. And of course, we can also console log about it. Okay, so here I say claps.length. All right, number of items. This sounds better. Okay, so everything should be good. All right. Okay, now go ahead and save it. So I'll restart it so that we understand it better. Okay, cool. Waiting. Okay, done. So, well, the number of item is 1. Number of item is 2 because claps are increasing. Number of item is 3. All right. Number of item is 4, and that's the total claps. All right. Okay. So now let's go ahead and now we want to do something different right now. So once I click on this, I want a bubble to appear. Okay, so now to appear this bubble, well, bubble should be a view. So let's go ahead and create this view. All right, okay, and I also want it to animate and go up. Okay, and this one I want to do it in a separate function component. So I'll declare this function component over here. Okay, well, let's go ahead and call it const bubble hand. I would say like that. Okay, so now to do that, what I want to do, the few thing I want to do, once it's clicked here, okay, well, that'll do animation, right? It will go up. So we need to call the animated component from React Native. All right, so let's go ahead and return a function first, or return a component in this case, and we'll call animated dot view. That would be a view. All right, let's make sure animated has been imported. Yes, it has. And let's go ahead and define some styles for it. So styles dot say clapped bubble, or maybe just we call it bubble. That makes sense. All right, now we'll go ahead and define properties for this. Okay, well, now one thing, our bubble would be pretty much like this, except it will not have the hand. Every other property should be same. So let's go ahead and copy this thing. Yes. Okay, and right now one thing we could do, we change the button position so that we can see the button for now, and we also want to change the color, so FC5C65. all right, so now, well, this is the style has been given to our button, and let's save it first, and then at the same time actually we need to call this one. So let's go ahead and call it. So call a function component, you can just do curly braces bubble hand like this. Okay, and we can save, and after saving it we'll see somewhere over here. Okay, all right. Okay, now it showed up, right? Okay, so that means our bubble is there, but and later on we want to animate it, but we want to animate it from the exact position. We don't want to animate it from this position. So let's hide it. So how to hide it? Just give it same bottom position as this one, right? Okay, now let's save it. It would be, well, it's actually down below there. It's not really hidden, but of course it's covered by this hand over here, and it's a white background. Okay, so our bubble is there. So now one thing we want to do, once we click on this, or once the application loads, we want to show it up. We want to it to be able to translate to on y-axis. Okay, so we want to translate or move it up to the y-axis. So to do that, we already know that we need to define a animated variable. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'll call it bubble animation, and set bubble animation. Okay, so again we'll keep the track of this value using state variables. So new animated value 0, initialize it to 0, and what else? Okay, so now we can just go ahead and create this animation. And we want to start the animation. Well, we can start the animation using it's called useEffect. All right, so it will get called automatically once this function component has called. It's more like a React component did mount, because we are using function component, so we can't really use component did mount over here. All right, okay, so now I want to start the animation inside this useEffect. So timing, and I'll call bubble animation, and we want to run this animation to value say 550, and duration say 2 seconds for now. All right, and we'll start the animation. Okay, and let's make sure that useEffect has been imported. Cool. And now, well, so the value would be animated here using this timing function, and now we need to grab it. To grab it, let's define a function called const bubble, and we want to translate it on, or transform on y-axis. So let's call transform, and it takes a few values. The first one we can use for now, translate y, and trusted y equal bubble animation. So we assign this value. Now we need to bind this animation with our style object. To bind it, we can just provide it over here and call bubble down here. All right. Okay. So now let's go ahead and save it. So bubble is here, so everything should work properly. Okay. And well, rendered hooks more than during the previous render. Okay, now let's restart it. Yes. Well, in general, it happens, the crash, because to take effect of useEffect, you need to restart it instead of just saving it. So that's when it happens, though. And let's go ahead and use native driver because we have a warning here. Use native driver true. Okay, we are good. So now it started automatically. And well, now let's reload it. Let's reload it one more time. Okay, so but we want to animate it slowly, the opacity from 0 to 1, somewhere like that. It'll slowly appear. Okay, it'll slowly appear. So let's go ahead and define this animation for opacity. So const now bubble animation opacity set bubble animation opacity. All right, and again state variable, so new animated value, again we'll start it from 0. Okay, well, we'll start it from 0 and we'll finish it to 1. But now I want to run both of this animation together parallel, so we need to use animated-parallel function. Animated-parallel. Okay, all right. Now you want to call this one. This is for transforming on y-axis, and this one with our opacity animation. So let's define it here: animated timing and bubble animation opacity. Okay, to value. So it'll start from 0 and end it to 1, and duration say 2000 milliseconds. And after that, we want to call the start function, so it'll start the animation. Okay, so now we'll save it and see. Let's see everything is okay. Okay, again should have a queue. This looks like a React bug. Let's see, maybe I'm missing this one actually. Everything should be good. Yes, it starts automatically. All right, now go ahead and use the native driver here. Okay, so now you see that once you start the animation over here or reload the animation, it auto starts. Actually, we don't want it to auto start. We want it to get started once I click on this button at that time, not before that. Okay, yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. And to do that, we need to define a condition. All right. So well, we'll call this condition over here. All right. So let's create another function, and I'll call it say render bubble, or yeah, say call it render bubble. Const render bubble. For now, it doesn't take any parameters, and we'll return a function. We'll return a function over here, or function component, and actually would be returning this one. But we want to return it based on a condition. And what's our condition? Condition is if it is more than 0, it means it's really 1. That means when it's clicked and the rendered function is called and count claps has been updated to 1, at that time we want to call it. Okay, so that's the condition. So to do that, so to evaluate this condition, we can just simply call this map function on this clap array. So let's go ahead and call it map function. Array has push function and map function in default, so we can use them as our conditional block over here. Now we'll want to pass a first parameter called, say, new count. All right. And well, I have tutorials on map function, how to use it. You can go ahead and look at it. So well, now we'll pass this parameter to our function called bubble hand. So let's go ahead and do it. So bubble hand, and let's close it, and it takes a key. Key should be new count. Okay, at the same time, well, okay, now for now we can save it now, and we'll see what we wanted. We'll find that, we'll see that result. But now, of course, because we are calling this one from here, so just let's replace it, render bubble. Okay, so all we did here, because we want to run it once I click the button over here, then the animation should start. Okay, so that's why we need a like conditional. It's more like a condition. It checks if the collapse has really collapsed, which means whether it's 1 or not. At least the list value is 1 or not when it's 0. So that happens when I click on the button and rendered function is invoked in React Native, and then the value has increased, and then the condition has been met, and we call this bubble hand, and then we see this animation has started. Okay, so let's make sure everything is okay. Now let's go ahead and save it. Okay, so render has been blah 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 blah. Okay, so it doesn't matter though. So let's go ahead and reload it. Okay, we are good now. Well, this happens when you play around with hooks and render components, so it's better you restart your Metro bundler. Okay, now let's go ahead and see. Yes. Okay, so now it's working, right? Yeah. So as you click, there is a condition, and this function get called because it's always more than 0. It's always more than 0. So each time you clap on it or click this button, so this render bubble, the condition has been met, and it's go ahead and renders. This happens because render function is invoked after every update. So after every update, this condition is met. It's always more than 0. So you click on it, this function get called from here, and this one calls eventually this one. So we see the animation is happening. It's coming up all the time. So this is the trick we have used here. All right. Okay. Now we want to render not this. We want to render our number of claps as well. So we can go ahead and do it. So how to do that? So now we need to pass this key over here. All right. So this one to somewhere else, right? Okay, to somewhere here. Okay, so let's go ahead and describe. Well, now this one. Let's see. This one. Actually, we can pass. This is just a key, so we can't really grab it, but we can pass this as our prop. So just pass it over here, new count. Okay, so whatever the count is there, this value is holding in the map function, we can pass it to our bubble hand function component. So now we are passing parameters, so that means we need to define props here. Okay, props. So now I can call this prop somewhere here, because that's new count is just a text, so we'll call it within our text component. And let's see, so I can show it like a plus over here, and props new count. Okay, all right, yes, because we have clapped it 4 times, now we have clapped it 5 times, now we have clapped it 7 times, 6 times, right? Yes. Okay, let's see, our animation bubble opacity has not been getting called. Yes, I missed it over here. I'm not passing the opacity. So opacity equals bubble animation opacity. Now it should work. Okay, now it slowly appears. Now it makes sense. Okay, all right, so now as you see, it stays up there. I want them to be gone. All right, I want them to be gone when the animation is done. It reaches there, and then it should be gone. That's what I want, right? I don't want to hang it there forever, right? Nobody wants. Okay, so to do that, So we need to call a function once the animation has been done. All right, we need to call a function. So let's first define this function somewhere here. So we'll call it const animation say completed. All right, so let's call it, but I want to take parameters. So let's call it count claps, or claps, just call it claps, okay, or anything, okay, or new count. It makes more sense, okay. All right, so I want to call it, and now I want to use two JavaScript function. The first one is called splice, so claps splice, and now I'm gonna call it again another function of claps index of, okay, new count, and we use 1 to show that to remove. Okay, so how to use splice? Okay, first see how to use index of, or what is index of. Index of is like whatever the value is here, say the index, or whatever the value you pass it here. Say I pass it, let me make an example for you. Say this is lat array, say 45, say 56, say 70, all right, or 70 again. So if the value is 70 has been passed here to here, any value, and then it finds the index for that value. So what's the index for this value over here? If the value is 70, the index should be 2, right? 0, 1, 2. That's how the index is counted. So if you pass here 56, what should be the index? That should be 1, right? So that's how it's working. And why we are passing this? Actually, we want to pass this on count claps to here and find the index, because it's increasing all the time, and we are saving it inside this claps array. So we want to get it from there. This value is passed down to here, and we find the index, okay? And when the index is found, we remove it using splice function from claps array. All right, so when you mention a non-zero value here, it removes that value for the index, okay? So say index we found for 70, or say for 10, the index should be, I think, 9, and so you pass 10 here, so this value returns actually 9, and that 9 means over here, so in that case 9 1, right? So that means remove an item at the 9th position of this array, and that's what the splice does. Splice, so it would be more like, say for this one 10, so for this 10 the index should be 9, and we already have 1 here. So that means splice function is, what is it doing? Find the 9th index, okay, and remove that, because we have 1, so that means remove 1. If you mention it to 0, it means remove nothing. But in this case, we want to remove that particular array value from here, from our array. Okay, that's what we are doing here. Okay, I have tutorials on this, so you can go ahead and see that. All right. Okay, so now I want to remove it, but now I need to call this one. Call where? Once the animation has been done. So where the animation is done. So actually, this animated function or animation functions, they have start, another function called start, and this, inside this function, the function block gets called when the animation is done. This animation, if once it is done, after 2 milliseconds later, whatever I put inside this start method or start function, it gets called, right? That's what it gets called from here. So we can use this React Native property or function to remove this one, okay? So because we already have passed this prop, so we can catch it, but to catch it, first we need to pass it from here. So let's pass it. It's called animation completed, animation completed. All right, so now we passed it, so that's the property is over here, and now we can call props.animation completed, and then we want to get the current index. What is the current index? That's new count. So let's pass props new count. All right, so now we will, once the animation has been done, after 2000 milliseconds this would be removed. All right, okay, let's go ahead and save it. Okay, now let's restart it. Wait a bit. Okay, we should be good very soon. Yes, well, yes, it's gone. Well, it's gone. Okay, but now you see the gone happens once I click on the button. Okay, but I don't want to do it. I don't want it to get, gone immediately. To do that, we can just here, let's see, over here, once the animation has been done, we can destroy this array. Which array? Array claps. So to destroy that, actually we can set it to null. How do we do that? We already have defined this one, set claps. So just go ahead and set claps, set it to null. So we are good. So after this, once the animation has been done over here, it would be destroyed or would be gone immediately. All right, so let's go ahead and save it. Perfect. Perfect. Now I want to change the text color. Over here it doesn't look that good, so our text is defined here. So define it as style here, styles.text. Okay, so text color white, and font size 22. Looks bigger. Okay, now let's go ahead and say it beautiful. Okay, all right. Okay, now we can also use actually another function here. So not really immediately it should go on. I can wait. The animation is done. I wait, because right now you see it reaches there and gone immediately. We don't want it. So to do it, we can use the Set Timeout function of react-native JavaScript. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this. So we'll call it inside, say inside this function. Okay, and set timeout, it takes second parameter. The first one is a function. The second one is, say, I view it 500 milliseconds. Okay, all right. So let's reload it. We do it from the beginning so that we understand the whole process. Okay, so now it would go up 5 milliseconds and gone. It doesn't go gone immediately, right? So we can see the number of claps up there. Perfect. Well, guys, so that's all about this React Native tutorial. Hope you learned something, and if you learned something, don't forget to give me a like and share it. Thank you so much.